A lot of people look at the bow and drill friction fire technique as an advanced skill in bushcraft, firecraft, and I don't believe that's the case at all. Many of us will put off learning how to use this kit until long after we have mastered the ferro rod, Bic lighters, solar magnification lenses, or whatever other kind of kit we're carrying. In this video, I want to talk about the importance of learning the bow and drill friction fire method first. Just to be clear, so that there's no misunderstanding or argument, I understand that the bow and drill friction fire technique is one of the hardest forms of making a fire. Obviously, it is more difficult and more time consuming than, say, solar magnification or a Bic lighter or even a ferro rod. And given the fact that we generally carry kit, the bow and drill is generally considered to be your last resort. It's the last method that you're going to use to create a fire. Got it. No argument there. But because it is the last resort, it means that if this doesn't work, you have no fire. And that is why I say that the bow and drill is the method that you should be practicing the most. The bow and drill friction fire technique is not just about learning a new skill in firecraft. When we practice the bow and drill technique, we're practicing knife skills. Depending on how you source your material, you could be practicing everything from rough cut chopping to fine carving. Many times you'll be able to source your spindle or drill from the landscape. You may be lucky enough to stumble upon a branch or twig that is the appropriate size for your spindle, and all you've got to do is just a little bit of touch up on it. Here, I'm sourcing my spindle from this piece of log, I believe it's olive wood, but whatever, and I'm just going to start carving it down. The knife skills that you practice when you're carving out your spindle may have you taking your spindle from a square dowel down to round, or you might be comfortable just making it round from the very beginning. The knife skills that you practice allow you to practice taking a piece of material from square to round, or maintaining that round diameter from a round stock. Either way, it's all good practice with your knife. Depending on how you want to attach the cordage to your bow stick, this fire making method allows you to practice those knife skills, whether it's carving a saddle groove or a cordage notch into the ends of your bow stick so that you can tie your string on, or however you're going to attach your string. There are very important and useful knife skills to be practiced and learned, mastered in the bow and drill friction fire technique. Preparing your hearth board is another excellent opportunity to practice knife skills. Here, I'm using the very tip of my knife, because it has a spear point, to carve out that little divot. And a lot of times, after I burn that divot in, I will use either the saw on my multi-tool, or I'll use the toothy spine on the backside of my blade to carve that notch in. Either way I do it, I'm practicing knife skills. When we use the bow and drill friction fire method, all we're doing is creating an ember. It's never going to burst into a flame as it would if you're using a big lighter or a ferro rod. So, necessarily, we need a tinder nest or a little bird's nest, a little handful of fine shavings. The knife I carry has a small quarter round like a tracker because I sharpened it into there. But nevertheless, practicing with this knife, I'm able to create my own tinder bundle, and that's important because first of all, I'm going to need a tinder nest into which to put my ember, and also if I'm out in the cold, wet conditions, everything that I might harvest from the ground could be very wet. So I'll baton through that larger material, get to the dry wood, and then I'll use my knife to shave myself up a little handful of fine material, make a bird's nest out of that dry stuff. So again, practicing the bow and drill friction fire allows me to practice making my own curls, making my own bird's nest for that ember. Without question, the bow and drill friction fire method is an incredibly important skill in firecraft and just overall outdoor survival. Not only is it the last resort and it has to work, but it also allows you to practice incredibly valuable and transferable knife skills. So if you're a relative newcomer, a newbie in the outdoors community, I say pick up your knife and start practicing the bow and drill long before you start setting fires with a big lighter or a Fresnel lens or a ferro rod or any of your other kit. That stuff is great, but what if it wears out? What if you lose it? What if it's cold and you can't get your big lighter to work? Incidentally, stick that sucker in your mouth and warm it up for a few seconds and it'll light right up as soon as it gets above, I think 32 degrees is the temperature that butane will vaporize at, and your big lighter will be fine. But still, what if it doesn't work anymore? What if you lose it? Bottom line is, that kit is great if you've got it. That kit is great if you can use it. But if all you have is the shirt on your back and a couple sticks and of course enough material to actually create a sustainable fire, then the bow and drill friction fire method might just be the one you have to employ. Is practicing the bow and drill and practicing these knife skills appropriate for all ages? Well, as a scout guide or a parent, you have to be the one to decide whether or not it's appropriate to allow your youngsters to practice with their knife. I say, if you're old enough to carry a knife, then you're old enough to learn how to use it and to maintain it in the field. I'm not going to tell anybody at what age they should start practicing with a knife or practicing to make fire. You as the parent or the guardian have sole discretion over that. I just want to encourage you to don't put this off any longer. Carrying kit is great, but knowing how to make fire completely off the landscape is even better. You guys have a blast.